Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Midwest Prairie Summer Service Co-op for 2021. As our congregations begin planning to reopen in-person gatherings this fall after our long pandemic separation, we take this opportunity for a series of virtual visits with some of our neighboring UU churches over the summer weeks. Each Sunday, you are invited to experience inspirational messages from a variety of our ministers, together with music and other elements that make our communities special. We hope that this morning's service will engage your thoughts and lift your spirits, giving you courage to make a difference in the world and helping to strengthen the connections that sustain us all.
Hello, good morning. My name is Katie Kingery Page, and I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan, Kansas. We welcome you today to this service led by our minister, the Reverend Jonalu Johnstone. We welcome you no matter what phase you're in of your own personal reopening. Maybe you are tightly closed like a beautiful lotus bud, or perhaps you're beginning to open and venture forth, or maybe you're in full blossom, but still trying to hold on to the essential change that we know has to come, even as the world tells us that we can return to earlier times. Welcome. A chalice lighting for liminal times by Summer Albayeti. In betwixt and between, we move in the liminal spaces that show shades of what can become, what can be. We light this chalice as a symbol of courage to move into that time, this and that, and not this and not that, with patience and faith and love and hope that this time will pass, like the sun that moves in between rising and setting, reminding us that beauty resounds in betwixt and in between.
When the beauty of the summer gives way to autumn's leaves, or cold winds of the winter strip the colors from the trees, when the bleak December cold strips out life with icy hands, know another spring is coming, and the world will live again. As the evening fades to twilight and the darkness shrouds the plains, the creatures all cease calling, only silence now remains. When the moon is hidden and the darkness closes in, know that soon the dawn will break and the world will live again.
This poem was written on the first day of quarantine. Today, When I Could Do Nothing, by Jane Hirschfield. Today, when I could do nothing, I saved an ant. It must have come in with the morning paper, still being delivered to those sheltered in place. A morning paper is still an essential service. I am not an essential service. I have coffee and books, time, a garden, silence enough to fill cisterns. It must have first walked the morning paper as if loosened ink, taking the shape of an ant, then across the laptop, computer, warm, then onto the back of a cushion, Small black ant alone, crossing a navy cushion, moving steadily because that is what it could do. Set outside in the sun, it could not have found its nest again. So what then did I save? It did not move as if frightened, even while walking my hand, which moved it through swiftness and air. Ant alone, without companions, whose ant heart I could not fathom. How is your life? I wanted to ask. I lifted it, took it outside. This first day when I could do nothing, contribute nothing, beyond staying distant from my own kind, I did this.
All overgrown by cunning moss, all interspersed with weed, the little cage of Kerbel in quiet hours laid. This bird serving others when frost too sharply came, retired to other latitudes, quietly did the same, but differed in returning. Since Yorkshire hills are green, yet not in all the nest I meet can nightingale be seen.
I'm going to read you a story about a little boy named Harold. Harold had an idea about something he wanted to do. Many challenges appeared, but he didn't just sit around waiting for things to change. He accepted each situation as an opportunity. He used his energy and his imagination to create his own reality. Harold and the Purple Crayon by Crockett Johnson. One evening, after thinking it over for some time, Harold decided to go for a walk in the moonlight. There wasn't any moon, and Harold needed a moon for a walk in the moonlight. And he needed something to walk on. He made a long, straight path so he wouldn't get lost. And he set off on his walk, taking his big purple crayon with him. But he didn't seem to be getting anywhere on the long, straight path. So he left the path for a short cut across a field, and the moon went with him. The shortcut led right to where Harold thought a forest ought to be. He didn't want to get lost in the woods, so he made a very small forest with just one tree in it. It turned out to be an apple tree. The apples would be very tasty, Harold thought, when they got red. So he put a frightening dragon under the tree to guard the apples. It was a terribly frightening dragon. It even frightened Harold. He backed away. His hand holding the purple crayon shook. Suddenly he realized what was happening. By then, Harold was over his head in an ocean. He came up thinking fast, and in no time he was climbing aboard a trim little boat. He quickly set sail, and the moon sailed along with him. After he had sailed long enough, Harold made land without much trouble. He stepped ashore on the beach, wondering where he was. The sandy beach reminded Harold of picnics, and the thought of picnics made him hungry. So he laid out a nice, simple picnic lunch. there was nothing but pie. But there were all 9 kinds of pie that Harold liked best. When Harold finished his picnic, there was quite a lot left. He hated to see so much delicious pie go to waste. So Harold left a very hungry moose and a deserving porcupine to finish it up. And off he went, looking for a hill to climb to see where he was. Harold knew that the higher up he went, the farther he could see, so he decided to make the hill into a mountain. If he went high enough, he thought, he could see the window of his bedroom. He was tired, and he felt he ought to be getting to bed. He hoped he could see his bedroom window from the top of the mountain. But as he looked down over the other side, he slipped, and there wasn't any other side of the mountain. He was falling in thin air. But luckily, he kept his wits and his purple crayon. He made a balloon, and he grabbed onto it. He made a basket under the balloon big enough to stand in. He had a fine view from the balloon, but he couldn't see his window. He couldn't even see a house, so he made a house with windows. And he landed the balloon on the grass in the front yard. None of the windows was his window. He tried to think where his window ought to be. He made some more windows. He made a big building full of windows. He made lots of buildings full of windows. He made a whole city full of windows. But none of the windows was his window. He couldn't think where it might be. He decided to ask a policeman. The policeman pointed the way Harold was going anyway, but Harold thanked him. And he walked along with the moon, wishing he was in his room and in bed. Then, suddenly, Harold remembered. He remembered where his bedroom window was when there was a moon. It was always right around the moon. And then Harold made his bed. He got in it, and he drew up the covers. The purple crayon dropped on the floor, and Harold dropped off to sleep.
The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan, Kansas is a bold model of love and a beacon of liberal religion. If you believe in what we do, then continue to help breathe us into life by giving of your time, talent, and treasure. Donations made this month, unless they are marked for pledge or for general fund, will go to support the Guardians. The Guardians are a citizen-based organization of men helping other men. The Guardians try to meet men in need where they are and help provide for their essential services.
Sing, be, live, sing, this starry hour, the wind it stirs. rain and strife, I'll sing, be and live, sing peace, peace.
The seasons of our lives come and go in an endless swirl. Beginnings and endings can be hard to discern as they all have their own timeline. Often changes come slowly enough that we hardly notice them unless we focus on one particular person or one particular thing. The toddler is suddenly taller and less baby round and more angular, and next thing you know, they're a child. And wrinkles around our own eyes deepen ever so slowly. The tree leaves out into full bloom, and it's summer instead of spring. The dawning realization of buried history shifts our understanding of ourselves. Everything on its own schedule, so the change may be noticeable in one place and not in another. When is the beginning? When is the ending? The change may suddenly happen, or it may have been coming and coming, or it may roll in so slowly that it's completely imperceptible. We humans have a need to note the changes, the passages, however they come, whenever we notice them. As Unitarian minister Max Kutz of beloved memory put it, when seasons come, as seasons do, old and known, but somehow new, when lives are born or people die, when something sacred sensed in soil or sky, mark the time. Respond with thought or prayer or smile or grief. Let nothing living slip between the fingers of the mind, for all of these are holy things we will not, cannot find again. Here's the thing, though. For the past 16 months, we have not been able to mark the time in the same ways we have been used to. Weddings and memorial services, if done at all, were small or virtual, never quite as satisfying as being there. I did one child dedication at this time. We wore masks, and there were only 4 adults gathered around this precious little one. We taped it, of course, and shared with the congregation, but it's not the same as being there. Graduations skipped or diminished. Birthdays slipped by, barely acknowledged. Holidays had passed without hoopla. Seasons have come and gone, and we have been unable to mark them in ways we are used to, with large family or community gatherings, with food and drinks and joy, or with food and drinks and sadness, depending on the occasion. So in the time we have been socially distanced, new things have started and old things have passed away with little attention or acknowledgement. In missing all of this, our losses have piled higher and higher, heaping up, weighing on our hearts, and stirring up grief we don't even know the source of. And many of us have the even deeper burden of deaths of loved ones, whether by COVID or other causes, that have felt more complicated or maybe less real than they might have. Meanwhile, people of color especially have felt acute pain with the George Floyd murder and continued revelations of the ongoing racism that resists eradication in our American culture. So many feelings: sadness, anger, loss, fear, in an endless swirl. Now, though, we are finally poking our heads out of the holes and wandering away from our houses. Is it the end of COVID? No. Is it the beginning of a new time? Maybe. The pandemic's not over. We know that. We still feel the threat of the Delta variant, and who knows what else is coming down the horizon. Yet we are finding life again. We are finding life again. I went to our community's Pride picnic recently, and how great it was to see hundreds of people being joyous together, outdoors, safely. I hugged people I had not seen in more than a year. I marveled at the beauty of a diverse community. I basked in the energy of the time. I had missed this so much. And so had everyone else. I soaked it up. And so did everyone else. This summer series of services is focused on how we open up to the possibilities of what comes next. My colleague, Reverend Oscar Sinclair, reminded us a couple weeks ago that, as another colleague suggested, we have to start with the condition of our soul. As we consider the condition of our souls, as we're honest about what has been going on with us, we recognize that most of us have some needs left over from the last 16 months. As we rediscover or uncover the missing parts of our lives, we are going to all need support and acknowledgement. We're going to need one another. Even those who spent the pandemic differently than most of us, content staying in without a lot of disruption or loss. Even those folks may feel a kind of survivor's guilt or may feel loss at having to return to the messy world. This is complicated and unfamiliar for us all. As Natalie Briscoe, the UUA Southern Region's lead staff person, said, everyone needs more than everyone can give. Now, in normal times, that's not necessarily true. Usually we have the communal capacity to bolster others enough that we can all be satisfied. We may make choices about not supporting one another normally, but we have the capacity. Right now, though, right now, when the wounds of the pandemic still carry such potency, we are all a little less capable of extending ourselves to others, even a little less capable of taking good care of ourselves. Yet we must. We must take good care of ourselves, and we must do what we can for one another. I'm thinking a lot about grace these days. In the religious sphere, grace is receiving unearned gifts, usually from God. These days, though, I suggest we all need to be spreading grace. We need to be giving one another unearned gifts because we all need them. Because people will act out because they're stressed to the max, and they need to know we love them anyway. We need to give one another a break. Grace. I'm not arguing against accountability, but let's have accountability with grace. And that's part of how we deal with the loss and move forward. And that's where I'm focusing this morning, not so much on what's coming, but on how we deal with what we have already experienced so that we can move into the future, whatever it may be, whenever it comes, more seamlessly, more enthusiastically, more confidently, more hopefully. I'm talking to all of you out there, wherever you are, but I'm especially talking to the UU Fellowship of Manhattan. Some of you listening this morning know that I'm leaving this congregation after 6 years as their developmental minister to enter retirement. So one of the losses I am aware of is the move that I am making. Today, in addition to talking with all of you about navigating the seasons of life, hard enough under the best of circumstances, and we are not under the best of circumstances, I address the UU Fellowship of Manhattan particularly about the transition we face, that of leaving one another. All of you, though, whether here in Manhattan or across the Midwest, know about leaving and being left and can relate to what we at UUFM are facing this morning. Nothing lasts forever. I am both upheld and frustrated by the truth of this simple assertion. On the days when I am tired and angry and unhappy, mosquito bit, achy, hungry, I am quite glad to realize that this is not an eternal state. How much more true that is when my heart aches for the loss of a dear friend, or when I feel ill, or when I'm standing in the midst of chaotic emotions and events, and everything feels outside my control. Nothing lasts forever. All will be well, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well, said the mystic Julian of Norwich. On the other hand, on the days of beauty and perfection, I don't really want to let go of what I'm experiencing. I don't want to hear that nothing lasts forever when I'm sharing a moment with someone I love, or staring in wonder at a scene of natural beauty. When I'm having great fun, it rarely even occurs to me that it will end. I don't think about it. But nothing lasts forever. Every loss brings up the same emotions as death does. Denial, anger, sadness, guilt, fear, though not usually with the same intensity. Every leaving is really a small death that gives us practice for mortality. Now, those stages of death we talk about are really artificial constructs. They're not stages at all as we experiencing them. They're more like waves. Waves that come crashing over us. Sometimes we can see them coming, and other times they arrive unbidden when we hear a particular song or smell pine or cinnamon or even mold, a scent carrying us off to another time, another dimension. The wave crashes over our head and slowly ebbs away. Our initial reaction to the idea of loss is often to push it aside and refuse to acknowledge its truth. We've coped pretty well through all this, we think. Then, the other day, someone asked if I knew people who had died from COVID. And I do. I do. I don't like to look at that. I know people who have died. I know people who have long-haul COVID. I had COVID myself. So much that has happened that never got the full attention or processing that it needs. We don't like to deal with the reality of mortality. We don't like to take the time to say goodbye. We'd rather deny that it will really change. We'll still be friends, we say to a coworker moving on, but it's one thing to work together day in and day out, and quite another to have coffee every once in a while. The relationship has changed, and the truth is probably ended. Certainly, the form of the relationship has ended. But that's hard to face. And in the long run, so much healthier if we have faced it, named it, marked it, celebrated it, grieved it. It's hard that so much happened during this time without full acknowledgement. How do we acknowledge what has gone by and been left behind? We have been immersed in trauma and stress, and we don't want to go back there. We want to go as far away from those feelings and experiences as possible. We want to move forward, reclaim those good feelings I had at Pride. Just ignore all that crappy stuff that's gone by. Pandemic? What pandemic? Let's just forget it. Problem is, that's not so easy for our bodies where we live. Whether we consciously remember it or not, our bodies registered it as stress, and they refuse to let go of it. In 2019, just in time for the pandemic, Emily Nagoski and her sister Amelia Nagoski teamed up to write Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. The truth is that much of what they have to say is not a secret. There's plenty of research to back it up, and so much is things we know. They are just for some strange reason hard for us to do. For example, the single best way to complete the stress cycle, that is to tell our bodies they can quit acting like they need to run away from a tiger or a pandemic. Physical activity. Run, dance, walk, sweat, move. Other stuff that works? A good long hug. At least 20 seconds that can tell your body, you are all right. You are safe. You can quit stressing. A couple of other things work well to complete or break the stress cycle. Creative expression. Let yourself paint or sing or sculpt. Let something new come into being out of your own hands. Laughing hard for a while also tells the body to chill, or for that matter, crying hard for a while. And to really get stronger, rest. Sleep, yes, that's part of it. But rest is more than sleep. Rest is recuperating with conversation, or exercise, or lounging. Meditation is good too. And it also helps to find meaning in something larger than ourselves. That's what religion is about, right? Connecting with a community larger than ourselves, connecting with the universe through nature, through prayer, connecting with God, the divine, the holy, knowing that the world and what matters is bigger than we are, bigger than we can even imagine. Such a connection allows us to let go and know that we are not in control, that we can relax into trust that all will be well. I invite you, if you're willing, to take a moment and breathe deeply into your body. If you'll trust me, I'd like to take you on a tour of the beginnings and endings of your pandemic time and help you to release your body from the stressors that came along. Breathe. Breathe as deeply into your body as you can. Feel the breath descend into the very bottom part of your lungs. Imagine the breath going even further into your legs, into your feet. Breathe. Relax. Notice where you hold tension. If you need to stretch to release the tension, do so. Let your body be heavy against its chair or wherever you are seated. Rest. Rest makes our bodies stronger. As you continue to breathe and to relax, remember what comes to mind when you think of the beginnings you have experienced during pandemic times. Did you learn new skills? Did you start new habits, FaceTiming with relatives or baking bread or eating family meals together? Breathe into it. Let each memory come as a wave moving over you and receding. What comes to mind when you think of endings you have experienced in this time? Are there deaths you still grieve? Are there changes, moves, graduations? Did you lose contact with friends or miss relatives? Let each memory come as a wave moving over you and receding. Notice if there are things you want to hold on to process further later. Tuck them away inside your heart. You can always come back to them if they need further acknowledgement, celebration, or grief. Consider how you will return to what you need to return to, how you will equip yourself to look forward. And leave it there as one final wave washes over you and ebbs away. As you are ready, return your attention to your breath. Notice the place where you're sitting now. Notice the room you are in and the screen in front of you. Be here. Whatever you have experienced in the last 16 months, whatever you have experienced in your lifetime, may you find release from the stress it has brought you. Whatever you have experienced, may you find in it meaning and learnings that will enhance your life. Whatever you have experienced, may you hold tight to the joys and release the pain. And whatever you have experienced, may you find grace. And may you extend grace to all those around you who themselves have been through so much. Nothing lasts forever. May you find comfort in those words as you consider the seasons of your life, of this particular season of your life. So may it be. Amen, and blessed be.
To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to stay, a time to leave, a time to hold on, a time to let go, a time for friendship, a time for remembering.
I leave you with the words of Nancy Wood. Hold on to what is good, even if it's a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even if it's a tree that stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do, even if it is a long way from here. Hold on to life, even when it's easier letting go. Hold on to my hand, even when I have gone away from you. Amen. Blessed be.